Welcome back to This Mindful Life. I'm Michelle Marshall. So I have a question for you. Where are your mirrors? And I don't mean the mirrors in your bathroom. Where are your mirrors? Who are your mirrors? What are the mirrors in your life? And let me back up just a little bit. So some time ago, a friend of mine, you know who you are, we were having a conversation and she made a suggestion about something. And I pushed back on it or brushed it off or something. And she said, I don't know if you know this about yourself, but often when somebody gives a suggestion about something, you just shut it down. And I was like, what are you talking about? Of course, what did I want to do? I wanted to shut it down, which is what I did. And then I laughed because I realized what I did. But this is an example of what I mean by a mirror. Other examples too are sometimes not easy ones, right? I mean, that wasn't easy, but it was coming from a friend, so I could trust that it was from a place of wanting to help, a heart space, really, of trying to help me out. And when we have friends like this, our soul friends, the anamkaras, as they say in Irish, they understand the path that we're on, and they're often on it as well. I mean, not the exact same, but they're on a path, maybe a parallel path, a weaving path that touches in with ours. And they understand when we're trying to live a life of authenticity, of being awake, of a spiritual path even, which I really do consider myself to be on. And these soul friends, these mirrors in the form of other people, can be very beneficial to allowing us to continue to grow on the path that we are on. So she, on that day, in that particular circumstance, she was a mirror, and she was absolutely right. And when I think back over relationships over time, and I can see other circumstances in which I do a similar thing. My poor husband, I do it with him all the time, and probably the most, and probably because I feel the most safe with him. But mirrors are not just safe relationships under which we can trust that the suggestions are coming from a meaningful place, a heartfelt place. Mirrors can also be difficult situations with people that we don't agree with, people we think are harmful. They can be institutional things happening, situations happening in the world that hurt our heart, right? But all of these things that bring up strong emotions within us are mirrors on the path. They mirror us, back to us, our own values, our own beliefs. Often we react to these things out of a sense of ourselves, of this is who we are. This is what I believe, and I'm reacting to it based on that, without really taking the time to pause and go deeper into what it is we're reacting to, what it is we're feeling in our bodies, and the beliefs that exist underneath all of it. I have found over the last few years that there have been things that I did believe on a deep level that I would have never said that I believed, because there are things that were conditioned into me that I just kind of, grew into believing, taking on as myself. And as I really began to go into them, starting to notice, oh, well, I don't really believe that. I don't agree with that? Why am I living, reacting in a way that doesn't align with what I deeply believe? And it's only because we often don't allow ourselves the time to go into those very deep places. But I would also say the things that we believe that, or that we think we believe, but maybe we don't really believe because they don't align with our values. These are very uncomfortable places for us to face. So if I'm operating from a place in the world where there's some sense of insecurity and a fear of not having control because of, whatever from my past, if I'm operating in this, I have to have control over everything in my life. When people suggest another way of doing something, I'm going to push back. I'm going to get defensive because my sense of self is built into having control. If I relinquish a little bit of that control, it's very frightening. Here's a great example. Several years ago, I decided that I was not happy with the structure of my marriage anymore. And that didn't mean I wanted to get a divorce. That's not what that meant. What it meant was I wanted to move from this very traditional structure that we had set up from the time we were married, and we're about to have our 25th anniversary. So it's been a long marriage. We had originally set our relationship up as this very traditional structure where he worked. I wanted to be a mom. I did work for a period of time as well, but eventually didn't. And so I took care of everything in the house. It was, even though I was born in the 70s, it was a very traditional kind of setup. This worked for us for a long time. But at some point, I was exhausted from running everything and becoming resentful because I felt like he was not participating enough in the domestic side of life. And so I told him, I don't want to do it this way anymore. I need you to take on more domestic stuff. And this also freed me up to start a business. But the problem was I was still expecting him to do everything my way. And so what did that mean? That mean every time he did something and it wasn't my way, I would criticize it, or I would redo it, or I would get mad at him. And that made him feel like he didn't want to try. He didn't want to do it. What's the point? She's going to criticize me and redo it anyway. And it kept me like my tight grip of control over the domestic sphere, even though I didn't want it anymore. So I was making myself suffer. I was making my husband suffer. And it wasn't until I said, all right, Michelle, look, you can't have it both ways. If you want him to help, you just have to let him do it the way he's going to do it and be happy with the fact that he's contributing to making this a more balanced relationship rather than it has to be done this way. And so it's been a practice for me. It didn't just happen overnight because you don't just relinquish that kind of tensing and control overnight. But it's a practice. And what I've noticed is in releasing that practice, it frees me up emotionally, frees me up mentally. It creates some space where I can just let go of that and say, oh, okay, well, I can focus on this other thing now because it's taken care of. However it's taken care of, it doesn't matter, it's taken care of. It has also allowed him the space to feel comfortable doing more of that kind of thing without feeling like he's going to be reprimanded for doing it wrong and I'm treating him more like a child than a partner. So it goes both ways. And so this is an example of how if we're so tied to being a certain way, there's no space for anything else. There's no space for exploring how we may be in another way. There's no space for saying, oh, okay, well, if I decide not to do it this way anymore, what does that leave for me? Like, what opening does that create for me to develop something else, another way of being, other interests? What amount of energy and mental load does that free up for me so that I can pursue other things? So allowing all of these, our relationships, our experiences, our reactions to be sort of the mirrors in our lives that really make us look at ourselves and make us say, oh, you know what? I might claim to believe this thing, but I'm acting in a way that is counter to that. What a learning, what an insight, what a blessing. Oh my gosh, I'm really being kind of hypocritical. So how can I change things in my lives to really align with my values? So, what are the mirrors in your life? Who are the mirrors in your life? I'd love to hear from you about any experience you've ever had like this, where you were like, oh, you know what? I say that I believe this thing, but I'm actually acting like I don't believe that, right? Or times when a friend or somebody might have called you out and you really reacted in a way, defensively maybe, or in denial or something. But after you thought about it for a while, you're like, you know what? They did me a favor because they were right. And they really showed me an opportunity for how I can grow further into who I really am and being more authentic in my life. So yeah, share your experience with me. Shoot me a message, a video, DM, whatever it is. Thanks for watching.